Yeah, welcome to the very last session, the live focus sessions prior to September. This is the last one that we are going to have, but it is going to be one of the most impactful. I know because I just taught this program with my actual community right before, and they had a ton of questions. So I'm sure you guys are going to have a ton of questions as well. Before we get started, can I just confirm you guys can hear me? Please say yes in the chat if you can. Wonderful to see you here today. We're going to get into it. We're going to really get focused and talk a little bit about dopamine, because you guys know that you struggle. Yep. How can I manage my dopamine with ADHD? I can see that immediately here in the chat. So we know that you struggle with dopamine, but you don't know how to boost it. And if you do know how to boost it, you only know how to boost it the stressful way. Trust me, I know. If you want to hear a little bit about my story, I got burned out so badly in my university career that I quit my master's or left at the end of my master's, went and worked for a cashier at a bakery. And yes, music helps with ADHD, and we'll talk about all of those things in a second. We're going to get into it today. This is I get super distracted, I struggle with dopamine regulation, to I know exactly what I'm doing, I feel way more confident, I know I can get things done when I need to get them done. Who doesn't want to get things done when they need to get them done? It's a super important way to run a business. So wonderful to have you here. Please go ahead and tell me which country you are in the chat. Always good to hear and see where you are from, so I can get a sense of it. Okay, let's jump into it though. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. If you are over on YouTube, you can find me sharing my screen there at Unconventional Organization. Otherwise, I will just talk it through for those of you who are on Instagram. So there are three things that we are going to be talking about today. But first, I want to talk about the biggest lie that you get told and have probably heard and have probably said to yourself when you have ADHD and you struggle with dopamine. And that is, I have just got to try harder. I just need to try harder. I just need to push through. I just need to white knuckle it. Who's done that before? I need to white knuckle it. I can just go through, hit that wall, push through that wall. And then you know what you do? I know what you do because I've been there. You go on your phone and you scroll and you go, any minute now, I'm going to have the motivation to just push through that wall. And then you don't, because in reality, that is not how your brain works. That is not how things work. And you can push through for a little bit of time, but chances are you do what I did. 3 energy drinks a day, not enough sleep, using those deadlines, overworking myself like a crazy person, working 3 jobs, and in the end, super burned out. So no, you cannot just try harder. We could do that. You wouldn't be here having this conversation with me. Everybody in? If that's you, go ahead and put some love in the chat if that resonated with what you've heard and what you've experienced in the past. So what can we do instead? Well, if you want to have a little think about how basically the ADHD brain works, I'm gonna break it down for you. This is based on neuroscience, but I'm gonna make it easy. So when you start a task and you don't have ADHD, you're just, typical, you don't have ADHD symptoms, you start a task and your brain goes, oh my gosh, you're starting a task. That's cool. You're going to get something at the end of it. This task is going to be done. Maybe you get a reward. It's going to feel amazing. Why don't we go ahead and give you a little bit of that boost now so that you can just, you can receive it and it will feel great. And so your brain gives you a little thumbs up, and it's a reward for you, for your brain, for how it works. And it helps you get over the, oh, I have to do this task, of actually starting the task. When you have ADHD, that doesn't happen. When you have ADHD, and give me some love in the chat if this is you. When you have ADHD, what happens instead is that your brain goes, I mean, maybe there's a reward at the end. I don't know. It doesn't matter to me. It's not connected. It doesn't have any effect. And maybe I'll give you a little boost, but it's going to be the tiniest little boost. It's not going to be much. It's barely going to be anything. And mostly I'm just going to look at you and say, that sucks. Why are we doing that? And that is not very motivating. So the first thing I need you to understand is that if you're somebody who doesn't have ADHD symptoms, you're starting normal tasks at like 10. And if you have ADHD symptoms, you're starting tasks at like a 3 or maybe a 5 on a good day, right? And occasionally the stars align, you have motivation, and if you have ADHD, you're starting tasks at like a 20. You're like, oh, this is amazing. And then we dopamine dive, and we go really hard. We hyperfocus for hours and hours. And sometimes it's not even the thing you're supposed to be doing, which is always super fun. So these are all the reasons why we struggle with dopamine. So what do we need to do instead? What can we do to work with this way that our brain is working? The one thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and we want to give ourselves that boost. If you're starting at a 3 and everyone else is starting at a 10 in terms of motivation, we need to go ahead and give ourselves a little bit of extra motivation. Does that make sense to everybody? And by the way, if you have any questions, I will be answering questions in the chat. So if you want to go ahead and just put any questions there, I will go through and I will answer them at the end. I'm saving some time for that. So here's the thing. You want to boost your dopamine before you start the task. It's very specific. Not before the task itself, because we tried that. Remember the social media on the couch, and you're scrolling and you're going, I'm going to get super motivated, just you wait, and it never worked, and you never got off the couch, and you never actually went to work at your desk. We want to do it at the desk. What is the boost that you can give yourself? You guys almost all of you will already do this. You just don't realize. And that is, have you ever said to yourself, I cannot start a task without coffee. I have to make a cup of coffee. I have to sit down with a cup of coffee. And that is how I start my task. That is already you giving yourself a dopamine boost. You're giving yourself an artificial dopamine boost to help you start the task. But what we want to do is we want to add to that. We want to make it better, because coffee is great, but coffee 3 times a day, coffee 4 times a day, maybe you can't drink coffee. I don't drink caffeinated anymore. That makes things a lot more difficult. So what are we going to do instead? We want to think about our 5 senses. So touch, taste, sight, sound, smell. We want to add things that we like to the start of the task, and we want to make that something that is going to help us feel good about starting the task. So how does that work? Well, there is something really, really important that you want to think about here. It sounds kind of funny, but trust me, it's a vibe. You know that you're doing well. You know that you really have this sense of it when it's something that is a vibe. So if you think about, okay, I'm going to sit down at my desk, I'm going to have a coffee, I might, read an article, I might listen to some music, I might, if I like scents, I might put on some aromatherapy candles, something like that. That's a very vibey thing to do. It feels good. You're like, it's not exactly scrolling on social media, but I could probably do that. I could sit down and do that. That simple act of giving yourself a boost using your 5 senses is going to help you get to your desk much faster. I've done this with many, many clients. And what I found is that this really helps people get to their desk a lot faster than they would otherwise. So I highly, highly recommend doing something like this. And it'll take you a couple of tries to figure out what's going to work for you, but that is the next thing that we want to do. Okay, so sensory stacking, that's what we're calling it. Sensory stacking, that's what we use. Does anyone have any questions about sensory stacking? Go ahead and put your questions in the chat. Otherwise, yeah, just tell me, what are you taking away from that? What do you want to share? What are you going with? And then we're going to move on to how to use sensory stacking to get into focus. And for those of you who don't know, this is called the dopamine dial. And I actually have a whole article on the dopamine dial. So if you want that, just go ahead. You can DM me at Unconventional Organizations. Instagram, you can just DM me dopamine. I'll give you the article. The article has a free download that you can use. So everything that I'm explaining here, you can go ahead and you can download it for free. Just DM me dopamine at Unconventional Organization before the end of this conversation that we're having. Okay, so You now are in a position where you have made it to your desk. First of all, congratulations. That is not that easy. You and I both know that sometimes, even for the best of us, and we're talking about business owners a lot, if you're somebody who runs a business, you might sit down and say, okay, today's the day I'm going to lock in, I'm going to get work done, and then hours and hours and hours pass, and you don't actually end up doing anything. You're procrastinating, you're trying to start, you're maybe procrastinativity, you're on your email, you're like, oh, this counts, but in reality, you never actually sat down to do the thing that you know you needed to do. So you've done that, awesome job, that's great. Now we need to figure out how to get you to a place where you could actually focus on work. And there's a whole bunch of other steps to the step into focus routine that I won't go into today because I just want to talk about the dopamine part of it. But just know it also supports working memory, emotional vulnerability, things like that. But if we think of ourselves as going, okay, I'm having a coffee, I'm reading an article, or maybe I'm watching YouTube, I'm listening to music, I'm doing something like that. This is a vibe. Now we want to go ahead and we want to say, okay, this is the stage of dopamine that we're at. If we think about it as a big dial, we're kind of over here. We want to move closer to this side. On this side is where we're going to be just listening to music, maybe without lyrics, and we can kind of focus a little bit better. However, one of the things that you'll see a lot of people talk about is dopamine detoxing. Now, do I think that we could probably do a little bit less intense dopamine? Yeah, for sure, for sure. But do I think that we should 100% go, oh, great, let's just, sit in a dark room and just focus? Again, no, because that goes back to that try harder thing. Remember, we already did that. It didn't really work. So that idea of going straight from like social media to nothing, that's just going to take ages. It's too hard to push through. So instead, we want to taper down a little bit. This is really important. This is crucial. What does it mean to taper down? What does it mean to dial down? Well, if we were doing something like watching a YouTube video, for example, maybe we'd switch to a podcast, which is slightly less distracting. Maybe then we would switch to music with lyrics. Maybe then we would switch to music without lyrics. Do you see what I mean? We're dialing it down. We're going down to something that is a little bit less intense. And that is the focus. That's what we want to do. So that is essentially the idea. So what I want to know from you is, what would you dial it down to? What kind of dopamine do you tend to go for? And what would you do if you were thinking, okay, I need to dial it down? This is a really, really important question. This is something that I think a lot of us need to think about. I can see someone here said procrastination. It's so wild for me. And yeah, having a child forces me to be accountable. I know I have 2 little ones. But it's still hard. I think it's still, you get that dopamine from going, okay, this is the only time I have to work. But still, we can find ourselves, especially with the emails and especially with the scrolling while working 100%. You are right about that. So I want to know from you guys. We've talked about 3 things today. We've talked about, if you think about what we've talked about the idea that I've just got to try harder is a myth. It doesn't work with ADHD. We've talked about why we don't get as much of a boost for starting a task when you look at the research currently as people who don't have ADHD. So that seems to indicate that we're not getting that little, yay, thumbs up, you're going to feel great motivation that gets us to sit down. Then what can we do about it? Well, we need to start by giving ourselves a reward to artificially boost it. And if we're talking about artificially boosting it, well, how do we do that? We take our 5 senses: touch, taste, sight, sound, smell. What can we do? What can we add together to create a vibe? So you're like, oh, I'm sipping something really nice and cold in a hammock with my laptop at the beach, right? That's a vibe. I think we can all get behind the idea that maybe we'd want to work under those conditions, right? So what is your version of that? And then once we've gotten that, we've gotten started, we want to start dialing down our dopamine. So if we're going from something that's a lot more intense, a lot more, high stimulation, how can we dial it down to a bit of a lower stimulation activity? Those are the things that we're talking about here today. I also did want to just let you know, because this is everything that we talk about in our program, Focus Balanced Growth. We actually do have a Focus Balanced Growth program that is going to be ending today. So if you want to know a little bit more about that, I can go ahead and share that with you. You can just DM me Grow. and Instagram. I'm just putting it here for you on the information on YouTube as well. So completely up to you, but it does end today. The pricing point is going to be changing after this. And this is everything that we do to teach business owners specifically how to grow and focus and actually build momentum, build their business with ADHD. Okay, I'm going to jump into some questions for you guys. So I have some questions. What about from a child's point of view? Procrastination with doing homework, where to start? I mean, this is a really good question. I think a lot of people, if you have ADHD, you'll know that it is, genetic. So a lot of times if you have it, your kids might have it as well. So if we're talking about that, then we want to go ahead and we want to say, okay, well, let's do the same thing. So usually when I'm talking to parents, and I don't work with children specifically, I work with business owners specifically, but when I'm talking to parents and they're saying, how can I do this for children? It's the same thing, but it's just, limited down to children. So it's like, what would the child find particularly interesting? What are the 5 sensory things that they enjoy to touch, taste, see, smell, all of those kinds of things that we could stack, and we could say, why don't we start with doing that? Just get you to your desk. Let's do that for a couple of minutes, and then let's dial down and help you focus in that way as well. So that is pretty much everything that I recommend when it comes to kids. It's the same thing. It's just dialed down a little bit. Okay, cool. Well, it's been so wonderful having you guys here, by the way. This is my last Focus Live. I've been doing them all week leading up to September 1st, and this is my last one. I really wanted to share with you guys and give you something that you could use to hopefully get focused, some strategies that you could use to grow your business, to grow your revenue, to help understand that it could be done with ADHD. So thank you so much to everybody who has come, has watched me. It's really cool. I really appreciate it so much. Yeah. Any other questions? Otherwise, I will go ahead and we'll leave it there. Any other questions, guys? Awesome. Well, I think that is everything. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for chatting with me. I really appreciate it. Like I said, if you are interested in the program, just DM me Grow or check out the link in my YouTube. If you're interested in the free resource for dopamine, you can just DM me dopamine and we'll send that to you as well. Everything is closing from today in terms of the program that we're currently doing. And yeah, so if you want to grow, I'll see you there. Otherwise, thank you so much for hanging out with me. See you guys later. Bye.